Hi, my name's Bart Bohn. Thanks for coming out to learn about incubators and accelerators and all those buzzwords of things. This is going to be an interesting conversation. I have like a few slides. Really, they're just meant to be kind of anchors in a conversation, so ask lots of questions. Small group, so just ask questions and we'll talk about things. And particularly because once you go into startup land, there's this whole new category of words that get used that mean they're intentionally hard when there's really simple things behind the meaning. So ask questions when I say buzzwords and whatnot. Before I go into it, so UT did my MBA, graduated in 2007. Trinity University in San Antonio, chemical engineering and finance in the last century. Those are academics. I've been in Austin since MBA when I got here in 2005. And I've been here since then. Why I'm a good person to give this talk. Here's all the things I've started that fit this category. So the Translational Research Institute is working with universities, 21 universities across the country to help turn research into startups. This week I was at Carnegie Mellon in Pitt having some of those conversations. ATI is UT Austin's incubator. Inside of that, I ran the IT and wireless incubator until I shut it down. And then I launched the water incubator in it as well. So I can talk about that. Water Riot is a Department of Commerce funded program, it's a $1.4 million grant to figure out how do we apply IoT technologies to our water infrastructure. So we're about a year into that program. SEAL is UT's Summer Accelerator. So it's for student and faculty created startups, typically out of engineering and science, although plenty of software and business model type ideas as well. It runs each summer, usually June and July, plus or minus a week. The idea is to get you to your first real go, no-go decision. So it's now about to be in its 11th year. We worked with startups now from other universities, probably 12 or 13 other universities in one national lab. Over that time, the graduates have probably, about a third of the companies shut down at the end of the program. A third go on to raise money, and that third collectively has probably raised somewhere around 80 million. In Austin, the one that most people will recognize as Favor. So they came through a few years ago and just got acquired by HEB 2 weeks ago. So that's awesome. BuildSec Foundry, when I shut down the incubator at ATI, the IT wireless incubator, I was trying to figure out what could Austin be really good at nationally? What could we be really distinctive at? And so I thought about machine learning, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, all kind of buzzwords 3-4 years ago. And I found that in San Antonio, it's the second largest collection of military and federal 3-letter agency people who do cybersecurity defense and offense for the US government. So when you hear about nation state actors, it's those people there in San Antonio. And so if it's, top number 2 in the country, top 5 in the world, so we put the incubator down there. Still getting going. Our first company just closed a Series B of 5 million. And they're graduated, so they're off and moving forward. 3-day startup. I borrowed this slide from 3DS. Hopefully you guys know 3-day startup. Started here at UT 10 years ago. 2 computer science PhD students who got tired of sitting in lectures to learn about entrepreneurship. They figured if they just went and started a company over the weekend, they would learn more, regardless if it succeeded or failed. And so that first weekend, I was the adult supervision, which was comical. But we had a great time, and now it's 70 to 100 programs a year on 4 or 5 continents each year. Something like 100, 150 startups have actually launched out of 15,000 students. Collectively, they've raised probably 150, 200 million, even though it's academic oriented. Embrace, my most recent straight up startup. We were doing predictive customer service for retailers. So machine learning in the background based on lots of data. We went through Techstars and Capital Factory, which are probably the 2 highest profile accelerators in Austin. The other one being Y Combinator, but that's just in the Bay Area. So I can talk about those sides. Ravel was another machine learning computational layer for big data. It was me and a bunch of physicist PhDs, and they're just genius, crazy, smart people. We were part of it. That was part of ATI. We got funded and ended up selling pretty quickly to one of our customers. Moodfish was the company that came out of the very first 3-day startup. It was helping you find live entertainment based on the mood you wanted to be in. So if you want a romantic mood versus a raucous mood, we could help you find the right types of places to be. So again, all about data and analytics and machine learning. So those are things I've done. I've been on both sides of the table. I've started incubators and ran them, and I've been an entrepreneur inside of them. I've done both incubators and accelerators. We'll talk about what those differences mean. Any questions on me and who I am so far? Yeah. I am not an official mentor, but I talk to entrepreneurs all the time. Yep. Yeah, I'm not officially a mentor anywhere, but I probably have more entrepreneur conversations than most people in Austin. Bart at 3-day startup. Email. That's on my last slide as well. Cool. So that's me. So I can really tell you the truth and the dirty secrets from both sides. So there's lots of buzzwords. 10 years ago, this list of things that helped entrepreneurs didn't really exist when I first kind of got here into the space. Now there's hackathons, all the pitch competitions. I don't know, UT probably has 10 or 15 of them itself in various places. Blah, blah, blah. So let's talk about workshops, boot camps. I'm not sure there's really a difference, but somehow there is on marketing. Accelerators tend to be 2 to 3 month type programs. Incubators tend to be 1 to 3 year type programs. That's one of the big differences. In the late, ATI was one of the very first incubators. It was founded in 1989, and it's the longest running incubator in the country at this point. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, incubators was this cool, sexy thing. And in the dot-com bubble in 2000, an incubator IPO'd worth billions of dollars. And then all its portfolio companies were, of course, IPO.com stuff, and that collapsed, so the incubator collapsed within a week. That kind of quieted down incubators for a while. And then 2006 or 7, Y Combinator started and Techstars both started, and that kind of gave rise to the accelerator craze of the 3-month type model. Studios is where typically you raise a venture capital fund, and then that team helps to co-found a startup with some entrepreneurs, and they put some money into it. There's an emerging trend on those, so look for more studios coming out. And somehow there's a thing called labs. Rob Adams used to run the Austin Ventures labs a long time ago, back when that was in vogue. Studios and labs are pretty similar, just kind of rebranded, if that works. So that's kind of the landscape you're dealing with. Any questions on that? Because here's all the questions normally people ask me. Pretty obvious questions like, what the hell is this mess? What do I do? So it's typically a small venture capital fund, 5 or 10 million. And what they do is they co-found a startup. And so they find an entrepreneur who wants to do a startup, and they work with them. They write the first check in, they form the company, and they roll their sleeves up, get their hands super dirty on trying to build the technology, get the marketing going, file all the patents. Think of them as interim team members for a while, and then they hire the team on, then the graduates going out. And all along they're writing checks into the company, so they end up with a pretty big stake. But they're doing work for it. So here's Austin's landscape, and I think if I spent more than the 20 minutes it took me to make this, I could fill 3 slides worth of this, or 1 slide with lots of really small logos. I tried to hit the big ones. 10 years ago, less than this existed 10 years ago for sure. And now it's probably at least 3 times this. Mostly the UT ones are on the right. The accelerators are kind of up on the left. Quick things are in the middle. Co-working stuff is on the bottom. Just co-working places, there's 15 different co-working locations in Austin. And so I picked WeWork, Galvanize, Capital Factory as the main ones, Impact Hub. The latest big sexy addition to this is Mass Challenge. Did everyone see the Mass Challenge announcement? Okay. That's a great thing because they give away money for free, which is good. The one that stands out, the exception on here, one of the unusual ones is SKU. It's all about consumer packaged goods. One of the dirty secrets in Austin is that everyone thinks of us as a tech startup town. Nope. We're actually a consumer goods startup town. All the big exits have been consumer goods. Going back, Whole Foods, more recently Yeti. What's the jewelry one? Yes, $1 billion exit, basically, valuation. There's all the Clayton Christopher stuff, the vodka, and then the iced tea before that. We're a CPG town, and that's the only accelerator for it. It's a good spot to be. Everything else is tech, which is kind of funny in a sad way. All right. I'll pause. Does anybody have a specific question about any of these that you've seen or heard or have rumors about? I know everyone who runs all of these. It's a super small world, so I can tell you dirt about the person or about the program. I've been inside half of them. Yep, WeWork is their business model is they're a real estate company. What they do is they find offices, they take 20-year leases or really long leases, and then they charge startups or people a whole lot of money, really, really high prices for basically short-term rent. And they make the offices look really sexy and cool inside. And so like a desk downtown, I think is $750 a month. That's what I mean by high. Because they know it's going to turn over a bunch, they have to charge more, but they have this really long-term lease against it. And so it's a real estate company. The last funding they took, I think, was $5 billion from Goldman Sachs. And so they're playing at a totally different scale in the real estate game. On top of that, they try to justify the price point for your space with one, it's really nice. There's free beer, lots of coffee, there's water with fruit in it, so it tastes good. They try to do a lot of community events to try to help drive that sense of feel and that ownership and that sense of community. And so that does help, and that is kind of nice. Most entrepreneurs are freelancers. One of the problems is you feel lost. And so that's a great way to go find a home and get an office space for it. Galvanize, same model, but they specialize in education. Impact Hub, co-working space, but they look at impact, social good type ventures and entrepreneurs. Capital Factory is that for tech. Are you good? Okay, sorry. Yep, so I would also call SEAL as a pre-accelerator too, in reality. Both of them are trying to get the company ready. So when you sit down in front of someone who does this for a living, has a checkbook, and is playing at a serious game, that startup is ready to have a real conversation and prepared for that level. Each time you think about these things, it's like in the warehouse where you see a conveyor belt goes, then a conveyor belt, then a conveyor belt. Each one of those is at a different speed. And by the time you get to full venture capital funded with $10 million in your banking account, I mean, it's light speed. You're going all the way. The pre-accelerator it gets you up to the first gear, then let you go all the way. And so it's usually more about the person, the entrepreneurs, trying to get that team, trying to get the first cohesive business thesis. A lot of times entrepreneurs are really good at, I got this technology, or I know this problem, or something. But the other 5 or 6 main parts of the idea are pretty ill-formed. And so I was trying to get that together and get the person prepped to be an entrepreneur. It's not a rational choice, so it takes a lot to do that. Yeah, we use the phrase, ATI uses the phrase deep tech. I'm going to say we about ATI because I was there for 10 years and it takes a while to unlearn that habit. And so ATI talks about deep tech. It has portfolios in bioscience, which means like molecules curing brain cancer, and some other things that go inside the body that get wet and bloody. Water, so a lot of heavy engineering and science there. Clean energy, transportation. There's some waste recycling technologies coming through. So that's what we call deep tech, as opposed to a mobile app. Usually I have a phone in my hand so I can make that punchline. The way you build those companies is just so different than how you build software for a small business or a mobile app, and how you grow them is so very different, and how you put money and fund them is different. So that's the area we focus in. To give an example, one of our bioscience companies, we helped recruit them from San Diego to move to Austin. We got them funding from the Cancer Research Prevention Fund out of Texas. The day they joined ATI, they also got an $8 million Series A check because we helped them get that. And that's the beginning of their journey. Most tech software entrepreneurs think of that as like, whoa, we got $8 million. Like, nope, that's just the beginning. And so we tend to have those conversations a lot more. I ended up on a couch at South by Southwest 9 years ago, sitting next to Andrew Hyde, who founded Startup Weekend. And we had a good conversation about this at 1 a.m. So Startup Weekend, they're both fantastic programs. They serve a different audience. Startup Weekend tends to attract more folks from the community who want to work on a project for a focused project for 2 or 3 days and try to get other people basically to give them free labor. Hopefully at the end of that, you also pitch and you win some money. That's what Startup Weekend is. It's a great model. It helps train and expose a lot of people to startup ideas. 3-Day Startup is about education of college students. So it's a much more structured program where you're taught modules and then you're told to go practice the module. So it teaches how to do a customer interview, then it throws you out to make you go do 50 customer interviews. And you do 8 or 9 of those kinds of modules throughout the weekend or over the 3 days. One Startup Weekend ended up getting bought by Techstars a few years ago, but it scaled massively. And 3-Day Startup is a sustainable nonprofit that's growing. Yep. Do you have like a TVL shirt on? So I feel like I'm like, this is not going to be fair. Whatever I answer, I'm like, oh, this is a gotcha moment. No, so I took one of my startups to call it that, through Texas Venture Labs. And so what I did as an entrepreneur, I got access to a team of 4 or 5 grad students from across the campus, and I had them go do a strategic project for me. And so super smart people who rolled their sleeves up, and they could have phone call conversations with customers or channel partners or investors that I couldn't have. Because when you pick up the phone and say, hi, I'm a student at the University of Texas, people will tell you everything. And so from the entrepreneur standpoint, I got access to really smart people who did an important project for me over the course of a semester. From the student side, you're getting to work on real live deals and real important things that the entrepreneur is trying to figure out. End of the semester, everyone gets up on stage and talks, and it's a good thing. That's my version of TVL as I've experienced it. What other thoughts do you have on it? Other questions about logos up here? We can talk more about them too. A couple more slide spots. Yeah, so it's more the deep tech. Last summer, we had 17 teams. They ranged from the kind of light IP side of Airbnb for parking spots for football games. A guy came over from Clemson for that one. And I think the hardest core tech one had all the A&M's Hyperloop team. So they had all the patents on how to levitate and float a car or a train. And they're trying to figure out what to do with that. So that was just ridiculously cool. Another team came from Caltech and USC on artificial retinas for macular degeneration and other things. And then a team at UT came through a second time. In the body, pretty much everything that controls how your body works are proteins. But it turns out we know like less than 10% of the proteins that are in our body because we don't have anything that's sensitive enough to pick up the other 90%. They here at UT, they figured out how to pick up the other 90%. And so they're trying to figure out how do they commercialize that technology. So we tend to stuff all the way in between that. Mostly towards the engineering science stuff. But there's always a few software things. And then there's winners like Favor that kind of sit over in that category too. Yeah. When they were our experiment for non-UT teams 4 or 5 years ago. And since then, we started increasingly taking more non-UT teams. Students or faculty, anchored, yeah. Usually we say plus or minus 1 year from graduation, somewhere in that window. Okay. So here's some terms. Let's talk about when you decide to join one. There's always a cost. Nonprofit doesn't always mean no cost. It usually does. Aside from your time and energy and time away from family and the fact that you probably don't have any salary and can't pay rent and you eat like crap. Nonprofits do sometimes charge fees to be involved, or they ask for equity donations. ATI is a division of UT, it's a nonprofit therefore, but it still asks for equity donation to the university and charges fees to be part of it. Other ones are purely there. They're funded from other means. Almost always a government entity of some kind funds it so they can offer the services for free. Common equity. Common equity, does everyone know what common equity means from a startup standpoint? Or should we explain that? All right, so if you're going to go create a company, and that means you own the company, right? And so think about 2 people who own a company, then think about Facebook, where they have shares that trade on NASDAQ or all around the world at this point, where any of us could go buy a share of Facebook. Everyone got that? And so what you're actually buying is a share of a certain type of stock in Facebook called a common stock. And so when you're founders and you're sitting there and just you Mark Zuckerberg, you have all the common stock. And as you get more employees, you usually give them more common stock as a way to compensate them and incentivize them. There's another class of stock called preferred. And as you might guess, being preferred, it has extra benefits. When a venture capitalist gives you money, they actually get preferred stock in your company. So they have extra benefits, whether it's additional ways to make money or additional ways to control the company. And that's what I'm trying to set up. There's some preferred stock and common equity. Does that make sense so far? It's a very simplistic version, and there's all kinds of caveats, but for this, let's talk about it. When you join Techstars, the standard package is they give you $18,000. You give them 6% of your common equity. That's kind of generic model for Y Combinator and other places. They're getting just the same kind of rights that you have as a founder. Sometimes they know that really you end up making a lot of money when you invest in the company. And so some incubators or accelerators, when you join, you're giving that organization the rights to invest in you at a later date. And so basically what they do, they get to sit back and watch. They give you a little bit of money so you can pay for food and buy burritos. But they're really waiting to put a lot of money into 1 or 2 of the companies that are going through out of 10. Because they know if they can pick the right one, it's a much lower risk decision. They can put more money behind 1 or 2 companies. And so their compensation is the right to invest in only the ones they want to. So preferred investment is what I talked about, buying preferred equity. The usual way that happens is convertible note, safe and price equity. We'll come back to those. Convertible notes, basically it's debt. I'm going to give you, I as an investor are going to give you $100,000 to $1 million. And you can either, the idea is you would then owe it back to me. My goal is never to have you repay that debt though, which sounds strange. My goal is for that debt to turn into equity of your company. I actually want to own part of your company instead. So I think that's a bigger return. And that's where the word convertible comes from. It converts into equity after it's been debt. That is by far the most common way that early stage seed, pre-seed deals are written right now. A similar mechanism is something called SAFE. And it's a way that basically the investor gives you money, and in return you give them an agreement called a SAFE. That basically says, at some date in the future, we'll turn this money into equity. But there's not the debt obligation in the interim time. So it ends up working out the same from the entrepreneur standpoint, mostly. but it's another way to do it. Price to equity means they're straight up buying part of your company on day zero when they give you the cash. So all those are used inside inside accelerators and incubators. So when we joined Techstars, they gave me $18,000. I gave them 6% of equity, common stock. They also gave me $100,000 of convertible notes when I walked in the door, which was cool. And then we also raised another $40,000 of convertible notes through the program. So overall, Techstars put $168,000 into my company's bank account from getting in. That was kind of nice. Prize investment, typically there's some type of, this is mostly for competitions, although some accelerators do this. End of the weekend, end of the 2-3 months, you get up on stage, you present, and only some small number of the companies get an investment. That's what Mass Challenge is going to be. They have 84 companies in there, but I think only 10 to 15 or 20 tops will actually walk away with money at the end of it. And they all choose the winners differently. I think Mass Challenge is peer voted, which is a pretty cool model. Usually it's judges or investors or the group that runs the program will choose who wins the investment. Membership fee, that's really, you pay to be part of the group. You're paying for consulting is one way to think about it. And so mostly what I've tried to do in the last couple of slides is cause confusion. Because there's so many different programs and there are all these different terms of how you participate. Did I succeed so far? Okay. Before I go on, does everyone understand these at least at a basic level? Everything in life is negotiable. Yes. Yes. So the way ATI priced it, just to use an example close by, it was $5,000 a year payable each quarter. And if you stop being a member, you stop getting charged whatever quarter it is. Yeah. Yeah. Usually in almost every contract, there's a 30-day out. Like, we're going to stop. We're going to give up our membership. So then you stop paying. If it doesn't say that, something's wrong. I can actually name eras of specific programs. Some of them are the terms that cause me that make me violent tend to be when the entrepreneur is put into a hole where they're screwed until they achieve something heroic. And the odds of heroicism is like 2%. So a lot of times that means we'll give you some money, we'll let you into our program, but we're going to own a guaranteed amount of your company until you raise a Series A, until this big thing happens. And no matter how many more shares you give out to bring on new co-founders or other early stage investors, we're going to still own 25% of your business, no matter what. That's the kind of stuff that I go off and curse rants and I want to throw things, and there have been stages of terms like that on the logos on the prior page. That's my most egregious ones. Okay. So which ones for me? I tend to think about it in 3 time horizons. All 3 are relevant to me as an entrepreneur. It just depends on when I want to deploy them and why. And so I'm actually a fan as an entrepreneur as to that there are so many things. And so when you take pictures, this is really meant to be a shorthand for you to think about it. If I'm trying to get my team jazzed up and we're trying to charge a new mountain or whatever analogy you want to use because a new customer is showing up, or we have to do a really rapid product development cycle on a specific piece of technology, some of these short form, the 1, 2, 3 day programs is really cool because you can artificially suspend the laws of physics and force your team to work 40 or 45 hours over a weekend or something like that. You can't do that in a month. You kill people at that point, but you can do it for a couple of days. Or you can show up there and all these advisors come in and mentors come in, and you can capture as much learning from them and then step back and try to digest it. So that's a very strategic, calculated effort. Accelerators are really great at overcoming bigger obstacles. So who are your customers? Which market should be in? How do I raise money? How do I land my first channel partner? They'll give me access to these things. Those type of bigger strategic questions are great for accelerators. Because it does take 2 or 3 months to figure it out, do the research, then actually take action. Taking action on it where you still have support. I'm a fan of always having, every startup should have an incubator or co-working something and be part of that over the next 1 to 3 years. It's great to have those advisors who can see the long picture and to know what you went through 6 months ago and can remember some of those conversations and piece together those dots. As an entrepreneur, you get so myopically focused on what's right in front of you and the mallet that's about to hit you on the head. That's all you care about. And it's great to have an incubator person around you to help you understand the bigger picture, talk you off the ledge. I think half my job at ATI was I had to couch my office and entrepreneurs would come vent and they go, oh my God, the world's ending. I'm like, sit down, here's some coffee, let's talk. That was probably half of my job. So think about, usually if you're gonna sell something, and I wanna sell it to you, I'm probably not gonna sell it straight to you, I'm gonna go to Walmart to sell it to you. And so usually there's someone in between, that's the channel that runs between you and me. There's other companies in between us. Normally, in a lot of businesses, if I'm a brand new entrepreneur, it's really hard to build either a brand that you as a consumer recognize, or if you work in a big company, it takes a long time for me to meet you and to get you to trust me and all those kind of things. Whereas there's existing companies who you're used to dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so if I can convince those existing companies to then sell to you, a lot of those problems go away. No, it's not always helpful. There are plenty of advisors and mentors who will give you bad advice. I'm 100% confident I've given bad advice. I couldn't tell you which advice I gave was bad, but I've given it. There's no doubt in my mind. Having someone who's honest with you about what they're really comfortable with, what they know versus what they're guessing is important. One of the other challenges, we're in Austin, so we're mostly okay on this, that the mentors and advisors in Austin have reasonable experience for the advice they're giving. A lot of communities don't have that. And so if you're in some random spot that doesn't have a rich startup community and your advisor is giving you advice, remember their perspective that they're giving it from. It's likely not from the highly scalable startup, which is maybe a good thing. So co-working doesn't matter anymore for its model. I was part of the team that decided to stop. We had 25,000 square feet up at MCC, and it was no longer, given the way we were impacting companies, the space didn't matter. Yep. And I did that all the time, and we moved for a while to WeWork, as that worked as well. Like our room was, third or fifth the size of this space. They were already indicating by their feet and where they're choosing to office. And so we looked at that. We could have done a massive investment if UT would have come with a few $1 million, which wasn't going to happen. Yeah. Besides, there's WeWork and Capital Factory. We should just go right on the top of the stuff they've built. So much easier. No questions? Okay. So that's how I think about, from an entrepreneur standpoint, it's okay to do many. In fact, you should. And over the course of your, doing multiple accelerators is good, as long as you're making progress. Each time you do it, you're tackling a new strategic question. So when you're going through it, what should you have in mind? I struggle with this when we're in Techstars. I didn't have a very good specific objective. I didn't know that this is absolutely what I'm trying to achieve and why I'm here for 3 months. And I couldn't figure out how to build. It was really hard to build a set of measurable interim milestones, small milestones, and measure my progress towards that. And most of those programs are so intense that as an entrepreneur, you get lost in all the motion and commotion, and you go down these weird rabbit holes, and you have a lot of different mentors that cause severe mental whiplash. And one tells you to go this way, the other person tells you to go this way. And so this is what you feel like as an entrepreneur when you're inside these programs. And so coming back to something that's very concrete and very grounded will keep your sanity and probably help you get more out of it. So on the other side, there were 10 companies in our Techstars class. 3 of us lost a co-founder within those 3 months, including me. That was terrible. It's really frustrating. So some of the things you got to figure out how to manage that team and actually get more out of it is have your whole founding team be involved as much as possible. Don't tell the engineers to go sit over in the corner and just keep coding for the next 3 months. Have them be involved with the business person as well. You will have severe disagreements. You hear about co-founders as a marriage analogy. You have to learn how to fight. Every team does this in its own way. Storming and norming type stuff we hear about, it gets amplified in a startup, and it gets pushed through the roof when you're inside a pressure cooker like an accelerator. One of the things I struggled with, I'm an engineer by training, so I want to analyze and think about things. I hesitated too much. An entrepreneurial CEO is about realizing there's a decision, an action needs to be taken, getting as much information as you can, as fast as you can, making a decision, moving on, and going to the next thing, and just constantly doing that. Your pace of decision making is one of the barriers, the drivers of entrepreneurial success. I think I hesitated too much inside my programs. I wanted to think too much. I wanted to talk to the next person. I wanted to get another piece of information. It should have been screw it, that's it, let's go on this. More often than I did. That's a really hard balance. There's no magic answer in this. Chances are it's faster than you think. You're trying to do the amount of what it takes a normal company to do over the course of a year in a month. And moving fast. And by the way, you have 10 other teams that are probably all smarter than you and have more money than you trying to accomplish the exact same thing. And the startups in general, yeah. Yes, we were a Delaware C Corp, which meant we had bylaws for our company, and we both were hired on as employees. So we had employment agreements, and we had stock purchase agreements. So it wasn't a co-founders agreement, it was with the company. I had that in place before. If you don't have it, you have to do it. And the accelerator should be able to help you get that done. Yep, different ones are set up differently. I suspect all the companies that Techstars encounters or Y Combinator generally are formed and are up and running for a little bit. Certainly at Seal, some of our companies weren't actually companies yet. There were still people working on a project. Definitely have a co-founder. I was a solo founder for a year. It was just hell. It was horrible. As soon as I started getting co-founders, life got a lot better. Still didn't win, but definitely have co-founders. Sanity. You get too myopic and don't have perspective, and you absolutely are not good at everything. You're good at something, but they're going to be good at complementary skills. And so it actually takes a lot of work to find the right co-founders. But having that team is usually the right answer. In tech startups, the magic answer tends to be 3, sometimes 2, sometimes 4. Yep, you have to go find the right lawyers in town. Yeah, and they cost. Like even the accelerators will mostly just tell you, here's the 3 lawyers that we know, or incubators. We trust them, the advice they're going to give. We've read all their documents before. Just go pick whichever one fits. And they'll give you a discount because we told you to go. Guess what? You as the independent entrepreneur can get to the same lawyers. They may not fast track you or take the lunch right away, or I don't know, but they'll do the work for you as well. Yeah, there's a lot of the tech legal firms have published the basic documents, so they're out there. And so you can educate yourself and read real versions or real documents all on your own before you walk in the door, which makes it faster. Like Wilson Sonsini, I think, has a link. DLA Piper has a link. It won't take you long to Google to find them. Yeah, they're on the links. They're on the web pages of law firms. Yep. Usually my answer to something like that is go towards the most trusted brand in law firms and tech law firms. Wilson Sonsini, Cooley are some of the big ones. DLA Piper's here, Pillsbury, Andrews Kurth has been around. They do a lot of work with the MBA program. Kastner Huggins, KHGR, although they just split, was one of the other ones in town that did a lot of work at Capital Factory. And so go look at the premier programs and look at the lawyers that are supporting those programs. You'll see the logos on the websites. That's probably who you want. Yep, that's how to find me. I'm also clearly promoting self-interest here. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, there certainly will be new buzzwords. From a macro standpoint, one of my perspectives is that rewind the clock 70 years, you had Bell Labs inside AT&T, and all these other big companies had massive research capabilities that would feed their new growth opportunities and products and stuff. All of that is gone, right? The government is still investing into universities, and that has grown since then, but it hasn't really replaced all of it. And so there's this other thing called venture capital that works with crazy people like us who want to do a startup. We're basically outsourced innovation for corporations. So pharmaceutical companies have done this for a long time. They stopped investing in early research a long time ago. And what they do is they just wait for drugs to move through the FDA process, and there's a pretty standard price point at each step. And when they're ready to buy it, the price versus risk, they go, you're mine, you're mine. And so they've outsourced innovation. And I think I'm seeing more and more industries adopt the same model. That's one macro trend. The counterbalance to that is almost all of Techstars' growth has been corporates paying for programs as a way to get exposed to more innovation, either directly so they can take advantage of it, or to expose their people in the organization to that level of innovation so they can adopt that mindset. They're still buying the companies 3 years later. That's still what happens. Yeah. And so you'll see noise up here on top, but that's the structural. We watch the balance sheets and watch investment and flows of cash and expense. So I tend to always set so make financial, right? I tend to always set a minimum threshold I'm not willing to go below. That is a proxy to the risk I'm exposing my family to. So I'm going to make sure my daughter has a nice place to live and has food, right? Like, there's a bar way down there, and it kind of changes depending on where you are in life. And so they've all been okay-ish, some are more painful than others. But yeah, just get up and do it again. You should think about, if you did an ROI or an NPV calculation or something, you should absolutely go to corporate America or do something else. The odds of you hitting a massive home run are low, even if you do it a lot. There are ways to make it less risky, but you also give up some upside. If you're really worried about, NPV of your retirement account. I care about the journey, not the outcome. Yep. You have to pick the business model of the incubator or accelerator. Different ones are funded differently. So ATI was all money from the city, state, and federal departments. The university didn't give us any money. We had no capital to invest. And so our returns were very different, the way we thought about returns. So a company, the city of Austin gave us money, so we created jobs. So our dollar per job creation efficiency number, you end up looking for those kind of programs you can poke at. The other one is you should absolutely stand your ground. If you don't believe you need to raise 10 million, you need 200,000, right? No, like, this is a common conversation that entrepreneurs have all the time. There's a brainwashing that goes on that you should try to do the next Facebook and try to be the next big thing. And everyone buys in, and there's an echo chamber around you that warps your thinking as an entrepreneur that that's what you should go do. Not the right answer for almost all businesses and almost all entrepreneurs. Yeah, so you as an entrepreneur, if you have a startup idea you're working on, you're going there just to suck their brains dry and kind of drink a lot of Red Bull and maybe take a shot at the prize, something like that. If you're there to find a team, it's just an experience for a weekend. Don't have the expectation you're going to then join the team or have something out of it. It's really an expectations management question, I think, going into those kind of programs. Ask more questions. I'm here. I'll tell you crazy things. I'll turn the microphone off and come talk to you one-on-one afterwards if you want to ask really crazy things. Sure. There's one coming up in April 5th-ish, 6th-ish. Go do that first. Have you done one before? No. Go do one first. That way you know how to pitch to 3DS, how to adjust the model for your specific school because you've done it before. Does that make sense? Yeah, usually there's 200-ish applications for each cycle at UT. So one, you can't always get in. Two, the vertically or the focused ones can be interesting, but they tend to be smaller. And you have to adjust them a little bit. So I run the water ones, and so they are a little bit different than the normal ones. Yeah, but email me, I can help with that. Okay. Thanks, everyone.